Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. Today's show is part two of a three-part interview we did with Lynyrd Skynyrd's drummer Artimus Pyle. In this clip, Artimus talks about some of his fellow Southern rockers, like the rock band, the Atlanta Rhythm Section, and how great they were, compared them to like the Wrecking Crew in L.A. In particular, Robert Nix, who also played drums with the Atlanta Rhythm Section and even played on one of Lynyrd Skynyrd's big hits. Also, we talk about the moments right before the horrendous plane crash that happened to Lynyrd Skynyrd and the moments that happened right after the plane crash to Artimus that are almost unbelievable. And of course, in part three, we will pick up about the plane crash that what we didn't talk about in part two here. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, part two of a three-part interview with Artimus Pyle. Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with Artimus Pyle. Artimus, we were just talking about Skynyrd and Ronnie and Bob and all all the great musicians that were in that band. And a few years ago, I had a call from Robert Nix, and he was, unfortunately, he passed away before he got him to me, but he was going to give me a set of his drums that he used.
I spoke at his funeral.
Did you really?
Yes.
Yeah, I sat in the car talking to him for a couple of hours one day.
He's a bigger-than-life character.
He was. It really was. And he was telling me that he had played on Tuesday's Gone, played drums on Tuesday's Gone.
I'm so glad you bring that up because I've got a statement. I played on the live album, recorded live at the Fox.
Fox in Atlanta?
Fox in Atlanta.
That's right. Yeah.
And we recorded that One More from the Road, and I played Tuesday's Gone. And I play it to this day. But nobody, and I mean nobody, can touch the way that Robert Nix played Tuesday's Gone on that album. It wasn't Bob, it was Robert. And that meat and potatoes style that he had, and the mix that I'm assuming Al Cooper and Jimmy Johnson, all the Muscle Shoals Swampers, all those cats contributed to that sound. And Robert got this beautiful sound, and his performance, I play it really good, but I can't touch the way he played it. There was so much feel the way Robert played it. And I spoke at Robert's funeral. I rented a car and drove down to Mississippi, and I wanted to be there. And Ronnie loved Robert. I mean, the guy played with Roy Orbison.
Right.
He played the Candymen, the Atlanta Rhythm Section. He hung out with the Beatles. I mean, Robert was a bigger-than-life character and had such a great pocket for playing drums. And I spoke at his funeral, and we went to the gravesite, and, he's never gone. He's never gone. All of us people that love life and love art and love music will never be gone. We'll always be here. And Robert is, but they asked me to speak at his, his daughters didn't make it. I was surprised that Scarlett didn't show up. None of the band members except for J.R. Cobb.
I knew J.R.
Right. And Buddy Bowie.
Buddy Bowie, yeah.
Buddy Bowie, the great Buddy Bowie, and the great sounds from over there at their studio, Studio One in Doraville.
Southern Tracks.
Right. All those great songs that came out of that.
You know that he co-wrote Cherry Hill Park, right?
Cherry Hill Park.
One of my favorite pop songs,
Well, and he got a Grammy for his song, So Into You.
Yeah.
That was in a movie, a soundtrack. He got a Grammy for that. I was so proud he got that. He wrote that song because he was in love with one of our backup singers, Leslie Hawkins.
Oh, yeah, okay.
and Leslie is so petite and Robert is so big. He fell in love with her, and that's where the line, the minute she walked into the room, and I'm so into you.
Yeah.
So he got a Grammy for it being in.
What a great record, man.
What a great record, man. All that Atlanta Rhythm Section stuff, man. It's like the wrecking crew of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And Robert on drums. But the first thing I said at the gravesite was I said, I don't know anybody that could stay mad at Robert for very long.
Yeah.
And everybody there cracked up because they all knew what I was talking about, that Robert was such a card, man. He was such a character. And he could piss people off. And, you know, he loved to drink. You know, he could hold a lot because he was a big man. I worked on a couple of projects with him. I was in a band called the Deep South, where Robert and I played together. And I'm kind of a showboat drummer. I have no technique whatsoever. I'm an animal, and I just, you know, wham, boom, bam. But Robert is this other guy with the pocket, and together we really were good. Our manager at one point was Garth Brooks's guy, Bob.
Bob Dole?
Bob, yeah.
Yeah, I know Bob.
He was managers, but it was such a band of egos and personalities. All I wanted it to do was just work because it was so good when we rehearsed, but it was too good. Nashville just would not have it. They would just not have this super group, you know, at a time of like, who's the next batch of big stars? But it was cool, and having, you know, Bob as a manager. But I loved Robert Nix. I loved playing with him. It was just such a pleasure and an honor. But I've met some just amazing people that with music that I will never, you know, forget. I wish Robert Nix were, you know, still here and we had Deep South going and everything, but everything happens. You know, I'm not going to question fate, you know, and I believe in God. You know, I'm not a religious person, but I lived in Jerusalem, Israel, in the castle of King David on Mount Zion for 3 years and studied Old Testament, Leviticus and everything with the whole diaspora yeshiva, which studies Torah. And I was the only Gentile in the place, and I felt useful because I could do things for them. And I feel like we should all help the Jewish people. We should help all people, black and white and red and yellow and white. And, you know, I love all people. And I think music is the language of the universe. So I'm going to play drums till I'm 100. Then I'm going to switch to stand-up comedy. But
hey, speaking of fate, we inducted Charlie Daniels a few years back.
Boy, that's a picker.
Yeah, and Dickie came in and played with him too at the show, Dickie Betts. And
Dickie Betts, yeah.
But anyway, I was interviewing Charlie over at BMI. When I first started the museum, I started just doing these one-camera interviews, and we put them out eventually. They're called the Vault series. What we're doing now is called the Backstage, Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. And
this is cool.
So obviously, the Leonard Skinner came up in the interview with Charlie, and
of course
he.
Yeah. We did a lot of shows together.
You might want to watch that if you have a time to see that interview. But he was in tears talking about Ronnie.
Well, it's very emotional for me too. Mm-hmm. And when I see that, and you know, I know that Charlie and Ronnie, as songwriters, I think they were singer-songwriters.
He just said he's just a good old boy. That's all he kept saying. He was just a good old boy. And he was talking about when they were going to do a concert, and he goes, we got a call, October the 20th, 1977, right? And he said the plane had crashed, and some people had gotten killed, and he was like, no, that can't be. That just can't be, man. And he said, so we went on stage because that's what they would have wanted us to do. And he said, I didn't know till the next day, really what had happened. But it was still a really difficult thing for him to talk about. So,
who all had been lost.
yeah.
He didn't know because a lot of people didn't know
Right.
for that first 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they released it, it was shocking, and I know it was to Charlie, because he and Ronnie were very close. And I mean, the reason I got the job with, how many people can say this? There are two men that were responsible for me being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which now that I'm in it, I find out it's kind of a big deal, with some pretty cool people, and there's a lot more coming. I know that that Ronnie would have wanted Charlie to continue. Charlie's one of those guys that, I mean, let's face it, he did 200 plus shows a year until he was 80, 11, teen, whatever it was.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the guy, I wanted, it's very emotional for me as well. And, I just went down to that place where we crashed with the band. We pulled our bus and we just had a moment. And because the memorial, it's like, have you been there? There are 3 granite markers, and they really did it beautiful. The people donated the property, and then they came in and...
Is it the exact spot that it happened at?
It's not the exact spot, but it's close to where we crashed. And the land was donated, so there are 3 monoliths, and they're Steve Gaines and Cassie and it looks just like them. It looks just like everybody. And then the story is etched in there. It's going to be there for a long time. So, I went down there, and it was emotional when I saw Steve and Cassie, because I think of Ronnie was able to leave a big legacy. Leonard Skinner music is still played every day all over the world. And we spent about a half an hour there, everybody. It was very quiet. Until this woman showed up that said she was the wife of Johnny Mote. The guy, when I walked out, I went to his barnyard, his farmhouse, to get help. And I always thought he shot me. And this woman was screaming at the top of her lungs. She said it 10 times. She said it once. She goes, "I'm the one that shot you." And I said, "Ma'am, this is very serious. Please calm down and tell me what you're saying." She goes, "We were having a fight. I was mad at Johnny. I shot at him and missed him and hit you. And you came up from out of nowhere." So I don't know what happened just before I got to the barnyard when I walked from the plane crash. I have no idea what happened, right? I thought it was Johnny because I heard a gun.
Did you get hit?
Yeah, in my right here. And I heard, I saw a gun. I saw him. I heard a gunshot. I felt something sting me. And I thought, hey, I was in shock from the plane crash. So I naturally thought it was his gun. But all these years, Johnny goes, "I didn't shoot you," and I was like, he goes, "It was a ricochet. It must have been a ricochet." And I said, "I don't give a damn what it was. A bullet went through my shoulder." So anyway, this woman screaming, the band heard her, all of our crew, our driver, and she's going over and over. So we left, we've had our moment at the monument. It's not going to be quiet now, because she was screaming and all this crazy stuff, just crazy stuff. So we went on to Texas to see, but
I'd always heard that he freaked out because he saw you kind of in the shape you were in from the crash,
had blood.
And it kind of scared him. But I didn't know that he actually shot you, because he said he didn't. Evidently, on anything that I ever read. So that's the story then.
Well, he told me to stop, and I really couldn't, because all my injuries were right in my chest, and I was holding myself together. So I was kind of stumbling forward, and he said, stop, because all Johnny was doing, I never blamed him. All he was doing was protecting his family. And they were just a little country farmhouse, and here's this guy that looks like Charles Manson, coming covered in blood, like coming at him like all these movies that I don't watch, zombies. I'm going like this, And he told me to stop, and I didn't. And I was still quite a ways. I saw a gun. I heard a shot. I felt something sting me. It spun me around. I fell on the ground, and I yelled, "Plane crash," with what I thought was my last breath. And then he ran over, and he said, "Oh, my God, I'm so sorry." And he picked me up and helped me to the farmhouse. I saw a phone on the wall. I called my wife, you know. You know, and I said, "Honey, we've had a plane crash, and there are people that are not alive, and I've got to go." It was less than 30 seconds. You know, and Johnny helped me. He put me in his truck, and he took me back to the crash site. And as we were going, you know, there was all kinds of help that was coming, you know, behind us. But, you know, calling my wife was really hard because she, of course, I had just left her.
Right.
We played in Greenville. Everything was happy. We were on top of the world. The band was hitting its lick, man, you know, and I got to be there. I'm lucky to be there. And then I called Patricia. There's a girl that plays her in the movie. And the girl asked me, "How should I play your wife?" And I said, "The sweetest person you've ever met in your life, and genuine as the day is long," you know. And she did. She portrayed her really well. And, you know, Pat, she understood. I said, "Honey, I've got to go. You're going to see it on TV. You're going to hear it on the radio, but I'm alive." And that's, you know, and coming out of the plane crash, I was walking in the black water, and there was a snake. And I yelled at the snake and said a couple of superlatives. And I said, "I will bite your head off." And I meant it. Nothing was going to stop me from getting to somewhere to bring help back to my friends. Nothing. My Marine Corps training kicked in. And I told that snake, "Man, I'm talking to a snake in the middle of a swamp," you know. So what happened was I laughed at myself for talking to a snake. And the snake just slithered on away. It was, I don't know, even know what kind of snake it was. But I laughed at myself and then I realized that I was alive. That made me understand that I could still laugh at myself for talking to a snake, even though it was a very, very serious situation. And but Johnny, you know, he's always said, "I didn't do that. It must have been a ricochet." And then his ex-wife runs up in front of the band and is screaming, "I'm the one who shot you." I'm like, "Did you? Thank you. Shoot me anytime." You know, I don't know. I didn't know what to say to her. She kept screaming.
What do you say to somebody says that?
She said her grandchildren were in the car. I said, "Well, maybe they need you." You know?
Hey, if you don't, we're gonna take a break. If you don't mind, when we come back, I'd like to end this with you telling what happened just when you realized the plane was about to go down, what was going on, and we're going to take a break then, and we'll be right back in just a moment.